Hello, YouTube fam. How are y'all doing? Come. I have somebody beautiful here. Come. My pretty child that likes to hide. Come now. Don't be hiding. See, you're wearing a shirt that is like my own. Eh? We are smile. You didn't even watch yourself in the Porsche video. She's smiling. Who has seen the Porsche video with Amarachi? Who has seen that video? Amarachi. Amarachi is just shy. She has run away again. Anyway, she's here with us as she often is. Jigger, how are you? Evelyn, how are you? A few occurrences happened today that made me want to preach this particular message. Can we separate the man from the message? Let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Lord, Almighty King, I come before you to thank you for everything you've done in our lives, for the gift of wisdom, for the gift of love, for the mercy upon our souls, and for the right guidance into the kingdom you have prepared from before we were born. We thank you, O Lord. In Yahushua's mighty name we pray. A lot of people are seeing what's happening with R. Kelly. I'm sure you know R. Kelly. I would love to be like your pastors and pretend I never listened to R. Kelly in my life. I still listened to R. Kelly the other day, even after the series came out. I wanted to hear what was in this guy that made us go so crazy about him back then in the 90s. And I've come to the realization that to varying degrees, there's an R. Kelly in all of us. Something happened today. I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to. Two men in our current fight against false doctrines. Two very powerful men came into conflict over some issues, especially with regards to money. And here's my verdict. The fact that I have not had any scandals or any issues is not because I'm less R. Kelly than you. It's just because God has been guiding me and giving me the ability to resist temptation. It's not a human doesn't have it ordinarily, especially since you walk around in a vessel, in a cage, in a container that is this earthly carnal body of ours. It yields to temptation. You see, when Christ taught us how to pray, he said, lead us not into temptation. Not say enemy die. All those things you people pray about Christ. Christ was more careful to pray about being led into temptation. The Pope, as much as I don't like the Pope. I love this particular Pope Francis. I adore him. He is someone I like to meet. But when he said something once that I kind of disagree with, because he's a man I respect so much, I will not say I disagree, he's talking, I kind of disagree with. Maybe if we ever had the opportunity to sit down and explain his stance better, or maybe because he was French is his first language, so maybe communicating in English might throw away some meaning from what he was trying to say. He said that shouldn't say that God should lead us not into temptation. And there's so many scriptures. The scriptures are very clear. It is written that both good and evil come from God. I hate doing this, especially when I didn't prepare that particular scripture. But because this is a very scriptural message, I find myself running back to the scriptures every single time, and it can be so frustrating. So if you've got a Bible, go with me. Sorry, waiting for the Bible to launch. Let's go to the book of Isaiah 45 and 7. The prophet Isaiah 45 and 7. Now, this is God himself talking. He says, I form the light and I create the darkness. I bring prosperity and create disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things. If we go to Lamentations 3 and 38, he says, is it not from the mouth of the Most High that both calamities and good things come? If we go to the book of Ecclesiastes 7 and 14, when times are good, be happy, but when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. God has made good, God has made bad. I want to go a little bit deep. I didn't plan this, so I'm going to try to rush through this as much as possible. But I can't resist when the Spirit is leading me, so please forgive me. If we can go together to the book of 1 Samuel chapter 16 and 14. Please, I want someone to be scrolling these Bible verses. They're very important. Sorry, these scripture verses, they're very important. So as many people as possible can see them, even if they can't see the content, at least they could go and verify. 1 Samuel chapter 16 and 14. Now the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul. An evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. The Spirit of God had departed, and another evil spirit from God came upon Saul. I also want to find just one more example in the scriptures, and then I will move on to where I was coming from. If we go to the book of 1 Kings chapter 22, 1 Kings 22, I'm looking for exactly where. Okay. 1 Kings 22 and 19. Then Micaiah continued, listen to what the Lord says. I saw the Lord sitting on the throne with all the armies of heaven around him, on his right and on his left. And the Lord said, who can entice Ahab to go into battle against Ramoth Gilead, so he can be killed? There were many suggestions. This was the Lord with heaven's armies. And finally, a spirit approached the Lord and said, I can do it. How will you do this? The Lord asked. And the Spirit replied, I will go out and inspire all of Ahab's prophets to speak lies. You will succeed, said the Lord. Go ahead and do it. Now, although we have a better priesthood now and a better covenant. I need you to understand that even temptation can come from God. Because here is a clear example of God looking for how to torment Ahab, and a spirit coming forward, and God telling that spirit, you know what, how are you going to do it? I'm going to make his prophets lie to him. All right, so go ahead. I'm giving you the go ahead. It's right there in the scriptures. So instead of you praying for your enemies to die, you should spend your time praying to have the power to resist temptation. Because sometimes it is God himself who would lead you into that temptation. Oh, yes, I sound crazy, I sound mad, but go with me to the book of Job, chapter 1. And let's read from 6. Job, chapter 1 and 6. I'm waiting. Are you there, Abiba? Or I said Abiba, Amarachi. Job chapter 1 and 6. If you're there, let me know. It's at the beginning of the Bible. You've seen it? Yes. Job chapter 1 and 6. One day, the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser Satan came with them. Where have you come from? Asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. Patrolling. Like a security guard watches over his domain, his terrain, Satan was patrolling. Then the Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Job? This is lead us not into temptation. Because it was the Lord that called Satan to look into Job's case. Unless the scriptures are lies. And as long as we believe that these scriptures are not lies, we've got to listen, understand, read, study, assimilate these scriptures. What they've taught us all through our lives in Christianity is falsehood, is lies from the pits of hell. You've got to know, not just know, but know and embrace the truth. Have you noticed my servant Job? He's the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. This is God handing Satan the portfolio of Job. Abi? Then Satan replied. For Satan to reply, it means God said something first. So Satan is not acting proactive, he is reactive. His reply is a reaction. So Satan answered the Lord. Satan replied to the Lord, yes, but Job has good reason to fear you. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. God now handed Job over to Satan. Finally, he said, all right, you may test him, said the Lord. Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but do not harm him physically. So Satan left the Lord's presence. Now, the Muslims believe that no matter how close you are to God, you will experience temptation a minimum of 6 times a day, according to a discussion I had with a Muslim cleric once. If the Muslims believe that you have temptations at least 6 times a day, temptation is there, bagada. Why are we praying over nonsense when the real thing we should be praying over largely neglected? Now, if you go to Job chapter 2 and verse 1, one day the members of the heavenly court came again to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser Satan came with them. Where are you coming from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I've been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. The Lord asked Satan, have you noticed my servant Jacob's second time? God is handing over Satan for temptation. He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil, and he has maintained his integrity even though you urged me to harm him without cause. Satan replied to the Lord, skin for skin. A man will give up everything he has to save his life, but reach out and take away his health, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, do with him as you please. This is God finally handing over a man of integrity, a good man, a man of good deeds, an almost blemish-free man to the accuser to be tormented. Why do you think? You see, you guys get this thing all wrong. That is why we are where we are as a body. We are where we are as a faith, because you get all these things twisted. Why do you think? I need those kids to be quiet. Why do you think Christ went into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights to fast? So he could bring out the devil and go through the most important temptations, the 3 temptations. So we don't have to go through them. All we need to do is ask every morning, lead us not into temptation. Whether you like it or not, Job was led into temptation. Just the way Christ himself was led into temptation. You don't know. Let's do this. I'm here to teach you the scriptures today. Go with me right now to the book of Matthew chapter 4 and 1. When Christ was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted there by the devil, he was led by the Holy Spirit. Lead us not into temptation. Let your spirit not lead us into temptation. The scriptures, read this very clear. Let me read it to you in Greek. Tote ho Jesus anekte is ten eremon hypotu pneumatos. Pneumatos, by the way, is the Spirit. Jesus is Christ. Tote ho Jesus, then Christ. Anexte, yes, then was led into the Eremon wilderness, hypoto, by the pneumatos, Holy Spirit, the Spirit. And the next word is pieresthai, to be tempted. So when the script, you see, let's say this prayer together. We've been fooled all our lives, and we're not going to grow in this buffoonery. Let's pray together. Amarachi, I want you to raise your voice with me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Lead us not into temptation. So when you're going to fast for 40 days and 40 nights, you're asking to be led into temptation. If you had spent the time you're spending listening to your GO, studying the scriptures, by now you'd have known enough of the truth for the Spirit to come to you and teach you that you don't need to fast for 40 days and 40 nights to be led into temptation, because if temptation comes, you won't have the power to resist. That is why the most important prayer in the whole world, the Lord's Prayer, asks. Because every time God gathers his army, Satan is there. And they have conversations. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to believe it or not. So waking up in the morning and getting a cutlass and cutting the ground and saying, Satan, die, die, is a waste of your time, your energy, and the little gray cells in your brain. It's a waste of all of them. Satan is not going to die until what is supposed to happen happens, and it hasn't started happening yet. So the reason why I don't have issues is not because I'm wiser. It's not because I'm more intelligent. It's not because I'm better looking or stronger. It's simply because I understand the truth and the Spirit. So I am nourished by both, and I am protected by his covering. That's the grace I have. And you see, when you ask God, let me tell you this thing, if I decided to live, that's why I tell you people that those people that are leading you, they are not well. If I decided to follow the doctrine of the present day church, I'll be inside temptation. If I decided that, until my ex dies, which is the doctrine of all this, your churches littering Lagos up and down like mushrooms. Churches that, as far as I'm concerned, they are better off being beer parlors than what they are. If I had listened to that, I cannot remarry because my ex has not died. So what options do I have? I'll be there forming, I can resist temptation, inside this ministry of God. Are you, listen. The Bible says, the scriptures say, David was a man after God's heart. If he could not resist temptation, if Solomon, the strongest man in the world, could not resist temptation, it is now me in Nigeria that I'm not even bloodline of David or bloodline of Solomon. Here in Nigeria, far away, my mother is Romanian, my father is Nigerian. It is me that will now resist temptation. You see, resisting temptation comes with it's like, there's something Jigga was saying something the other day. He said, you live in a carnal body. Your carnal body requires food. You cannot decide not to feed your carnal body. Your carnal body has desires. Channel them in the right. And that's why the Spirit revealed John chapter 4 to me, where Christ did not condemn the woman after she had lived with 5 husbands and was with the 6th, and she was living with the 6th despite not being married to him, and all whatever was, he never condemned her for once. And he made me realize that as far back as that day, the Samaritans were not under the Hebrew law, and neither are we. Clear biblical doctrinal example, Galatians chapter 2 verse 17. You are a sinner if you rebuild the old law. So what you have today is religion, organized religion, that is quite similar to organized crime, because they are both organized and they are both the ideologies of men. So it's very easy for us to sit down and judge R. Kelly, because he lives in a place where people talk, where women have rights. In this part of the world, there was a woman that told me that her pastor used to tell her mother that she had an evil spirit, and the mother, being dumb as she was, would bring the little child to the pastor, and the pastor would rape her. And at the end of every month, the pastor would go and give her a pill to make sure she doesn't get pregnant. So the pastor would drive to her school and tell the mother, I'm driving past your daughter's school. I'll drop by and see if she's okay. And inside that okay, will be forcing her to drink abortion pill. The poor lady was scarred for life. So we have R. Kellys behind pulpits. We have R. Kellys in Nollywood. We have R. Kellys everywhere. I'm not for one condoning what R. Kelly did. Don't get me wrong. I am totally against it. I do not believe a grown man has the right to indecently or inappropriately touch a minor. I do not believe women can be molested or harassed by men just because they have power or authority. I totally disagree with that. But you see, I like a knife that cuts through all. As you're cutting through Kelly, remember to cut through those Kellys around you. There was a story that was sent to me yesterday about a pastor from one of the most popular geos here who went to look for a young girl to sleep with, a 14-year-old girl, and apparently he thought he was talking to a girl. He didn't know he was talking to police. So he was caught, he was disgraced. Somebody sent it to me. I didn't want to publish it because the guy is dead. So I just said, you know what, in death, let me just give him the last honor. I will send you the story, Jigger. It's the most popular church in Nigeria. This guy is in one of their in their Austin, Texas branch. Is that not R. Kelly? The King James that translated Bible for you, was it not another, according to the reports where he was not another R. Kelly? Do we even want to start talking about David? And there's something I always tell people. You see, there's a grace upon our lives because we're walking in the Spirit and the truth of God that many people, despite being after God's heart in the Old Testament, didn't have. So when you subject yourself to the Old Covenant, what you are doing is you are putting yourself under the authority of a weaker, lesser priesthood. I don't know if I'm making sense to you. So each time you look and you see, when you go and search for doctrines and you run to David, you put yourself under a covenant that is weaker. The Bible is very clear. Hebrews chapter 7 and 18. I want you to read these scriptures again, over and over again. The former regulation is set aside because it was weak and useless. If it was not weak and it was not useless, it would not have been set aside. So when you see all the teachings of the apostles of Christ, and then you want to seek refuge in David, what you're doing is you're putting yourself under a weaker protection. It's like jumping out of a bulletproof car and jumping onto a bulletproof keke marwa. How much protection can you really get in a keke marwa, even if it is bulletproof? You are in a bulletproof jeep and you want to jump out into a bulletproof. That's what you're doing, more or less. David is no man. As far as I'm concerned, David was worse than R. Kelly, and I'll prove it to you. You want me to read you scriptures? I'll read you scriptures. I'll read you scriptures. I'm sure I've gone through this before. First Samuel chapter 18. I'm reading from 6. It's a long read, but follow me on it. When the victorious Israelite army was returning after David had killed the Philistine, women from the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song: Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. This made Saul very angry. What is this, he said. They credit David with 10,000 and me with only thousands? Next, they'll be making him their king. So from that time, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. A tormenting spirit came from God and turned the human being into a mad person. Anyway, that's aside. It just buttresses my earlier teaching. David was playing the harp as he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand, and he suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall, but David escaped him twice. Saul was then afraid of David, for the Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away and appointed him commander over 1,000 men, and David faithfully led his troops into battle. David continued to succeed in everything he did, for the Lord was with him. Then Saul recognized this and became even more afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful at leading his troops into battle. One day Saul said to David, "I'm ready to give you my older daughter Merab as your wife. But you must first prove yourself to be a real warrior by fighting the Lord's battles." For Saul thought, "I'll send him out against the Philistines and let them kill him rather than doing it myself. Who am I and what's my family in Israel that I should be the king's son-in-law?" David exclaimed, "My father's family is nothing." So when the time came for Saul to give his daughter in marriage to David, he gave her instead to Adriel, the man from Meholah. In the meantime, Saul's daughter Michal had fallen in love with David, and Saul was delighted when he heard about this. Here's another chance to see him killed by the Philistines. Saul said to himself, but to David he said, "Today you have a second chance to become my son-in-law." Then Saul told his men to say to David, "The king really likes you, and so do we. Why don't you accept the king's offer and become his son-in-law?" When Saul's men said these things to David, he replied, "How can a poor man from a humble family afford the bride price for the daughter of a king?" When Saul's men reported this back to the king, he told them, "Tell David that all I want for the bride price is 100 Philistine foreskins. Vengeance on my enemies is all I really want." But what Saul had in mind was that David would be killed in the fight. David was delighted to accept the offer. Before the time limit expired, he and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines. Then David fulfilled the king's requirement by presenting all the foreskins to him. So Saul gave his daughter Michal to David to be his wife. God forgive me, but what happened in Kenya yesterday is this. More or less. You want to marry a woman, you now go out and you kill 200 men, and then you bring their foreskins as bride price. Don't think you can do that under this dispensation of grace. You're going to go to jail. They're not even going to take you to ordinary jail. They will take you to where's that place where they keep terrorists? Guantanamo Bay. You'll be tried at Hague. They will not try you in local court. At The Hague, that's where you go. So when you establish doctrines in David, I want you to realize that there was an R. Kelly in David. So when you sit down and say David was a man after God's heart, and you now follow the line of David, you will get lost. You will be mixed up with all sorts of nonsense. You guys have no idea what David did. The one that disgusts me the most was what he did to Shimei. First Kings chapter 2 and 8. I'm sure a lot of you have heard the story of Shimei when Absalom, David's son, overthrew David and drove him into exile. As David was riding out of the city, Shimei, who was a descendant of Saul, was stoning him and cursing him. One man cut this guy's head. The guy said, lie, lie. David said, no, that is probably God that is punishing him. So if you go, this was now when David was old. Now what happened was, when Absalom died, he came back to claim his throne. And when he came back, Shimei realized that he had offended David. So he went to meet David and begged for forgiveness. So if you go to First Kings chapter 2 and 8, this is David handing over to Solomon. If you read from 7, it says, be kind to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead. Make them permanent guests at your table, for they took care of me when I fled from your brother Absalom. And remember Shimei, son of Gera, the man from Bahurim in Benjamin. He cursed me with a terrible curse as I was fleeing to Mahanaim. And when he came down to meet me at the Jordan River, I swore by the Lord that I will not kill him. So David swore by the Lord that he will not kill him. But that oath does not make him innocent. An oath you swore by God does not make a man innocent. You are a wise man and you know how to arrange a bloody death for him. So this is David conspiring with his son Solomon to bring a bloody death to a man he had forgiven, and he swore an oath before the Lord too. A new covenant doesn't work like this. You are to read about David and learn about the consequences of his actions, not to emulate them or think you could get God's protection through them. This covenant is null and void for Christianity. Then remember Merab, who was Saul's daughter that Saul was supposed to give. Let me read you another part. Second Samuel chapter 21 and 1. There was a famine during David's reign that lasted for 3 years. So David asked the Lord about it, and the Lord said, the famine has come because Saul and his family are guilty of murdering the Gibeonites. So the king summoned the Gibeonites. They were not part of Israel, but were all that was left of the nation of the Amorites. These people of Israel had sworn not to kill them, but Saul, in his zeal for Israel and Judah, had tried to wipe them out. David asked them, what can I do for you? How can I make amends so that you will bless the Lord's people again? Well, money can't settle this matter between us and the family of Saul, the Gibeonites replied. Neither can we demand the life of anyone in Israel. What can I do then? David asked. Just tell me and I'll do it for you. Then they replied, it was Saul who planned to destroy us to keep us from having any place in the territory of Israel. So let 7 of Saul's sons be handed over to us, and we will execute them before the Lord at Gibeon on the mountain of the Lord. Those days they used to use human sacrifice, execute people before the Lord. Don't try that now, it's not going to work. All right, the king said, I will do it. The king spared Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, who was Saul's grandson, because of the oath David and Jonathan had sworn before the Lord. All of a sudden, David remembers his oaths. When it's convenient, he remembers that he made an oath before the Lord. And when it is not convenient, David forgets that he made an oath. The oath he made to Shimei was not good, but the oath he made with Jonathan, double standards. Look at someone beside you and tell them double standards. You made an oath with Shimei, but then you connive with your son to bring him to a bloody death. But you made an oath with your good friend Jonathan, and you uphold that oath. And both oaths were made before God. Study your scriptures. And what's more pathetic, what's more annoying, what is more horrible in these things is what happens next. The king spared Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, who was Saul's grandson, because of the oath David and Jonathan had sworn before the Lord. But he gave them Saul's two sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, whose mother was Rizpah, daughter of Uriah. He also gave them the 5 sons of Saul's daughter Merab. Merab was supposed to be his first wife. Merab was supposed to be his first wife. But because Saul gave her to someone else instead, David goes to pack all her sons and gives them so that the Gibeonites can use them as sacrifice. It doesn't work like that in this. Look at someone beside you and tell them, it doesn't work like that in this covenant. So if you were to put David and R. Kelly side by side, I swear to you, R. Kelly is 10 times cleaner than the man who wrote most of your psalms. I don't know who's with me. Somebody said he's asking a question, Chibuke. What's your question, Chibuke? Somebody's telling me, listen to what this guy is saying. Comparing King David. You see, he's already calling David a king. And R. Kelly does not suffice. The case with Kelly is allowing parents to see their children and stop his manipulative ways. Even in his hood, people think he's not wise. We should pray for R. Kelly and not draw this unnecessary comparison. I ask again, brother, what are you trying to achieve? I'm trying to tell you that David was 150 million times worse than R. Kelly. And it would be fair to mute the sounds, except the ones that are relevant for today's gospel, because the man who wrote them is someone we should be wary of in our new covenant. The fact that Yehoshua came through him does not make him a saint. How can you have 2 oaths before God? You break one and you uphold one. How can you kill for one woman 200 men? How can you kill 5 of a woman's sons because she was given to another man instead of you? That's why I'm drawing the comparison, because we're hypocrites. We're quick to point fingers at R. Kelly. I'm not saying R. Kelly is good. I'm saying I agree with you, R. Kelly needs prayers. I agree what R. Kelly did was grossly wrong. But so is what David did, and he never gets penalized. David is praised. You have City of David. You have David's Christian Center. And then you're muting R. Kelly. That's hypocrisy. Mute them both. Look at someone beside you and tell them mute them both. He's telling me David was punished for his sins. David had lived to die an old age. How do you know? Let me read Bible for you. People think that I fell. When I said I was coming to teach your teachers scriptures, you think I fell from the sky? You think I don't know anything like you people? Let me read scriptures for you. David was punished for his sins. If David lived in this era, he would still be in prison. God called David a man after his heart. Yes, in this covenant, there is no man after God's heart in that way. Listen to 1 Kings chapter 1 and 1. This is how David died. King David was now very old, and no matter how many blankets covered him, he could not keep warm. So his advisors told him, "Let us find a young virgin to wait on you and look after you, my lord. She will lie in your arms and keep you warm." So they searched throughout the land of Israel for a beautiful girl and found Abishag from Shunem and brought her to the king. The girl was very beautiful, and she looked after the king and took care of him, but the king had no sexual relations with her. That's how they knew that the king is this one. He cannot touch this woman again. Baba, don't go. We can't justify what R. Kelly did. I will never justify it. I think what he did is worthy of punishment. But you see, my anger with punishment is you're muting the songs of R. Kelly. Agreed, let's mute them. Let's all put them on mute. Let's do this together. What about the King James Bible? The worst translation in the history of biblical translations. Are you not reading it? Was King James not selling our ancestors? I'm asking you people. The first place slaves landed when they got to the US is a place called Jamestown. How did it come Jamestown? No one is trying to justify R. Kelly. I'm just saying punish them all, mute them all. Mute one, mute all. How do we mute King David? Very easy. Any of the Psalms that does not correspond with Christianity and the teachings of Christ, hold it, put it on mute. R. Kelly was a singer, so was King David. It has been proven that much of his music is corrupt. Mute them. I will not sit here and justify anarchy. Somebody say R. Kelly is not remorseful. King James is remorseful. King David is remorseful. Wait, let me read Bible for you. Like I said, people think I fell from the sky. You call this remorseful? I'll read it to you. I read it already. I'll read it again. And I think I need to get up and leave. I've got work. They want you to think he was remorseful. Was he remorseful? I'll read this to you. First Kings chapter 2. And I'm reading from 1. I love the scriptures. They don't hide anything. As the time of King David's death approached, he gave this charge to his son Solomon. I am going where everyone on earth must go someday. Take courage and be a man. Observe the requirements of the Lord your God and follow his ways. Then you jump to 8 from 1. 2, 1 and 2. I just read 1 and 2 for you. Then jump to 8. Read the remaining in your spare time. And remember Shimei, the son of Gera, the man from Barium in Bethlehem. He cursed me with a terrible curse as I was fleeing to Mahanaim. Then he came down to meet me at the Jordan River. I swore by the Lord that I will not kill him. But that oath does not make him innocent. You are a wise man, and you will know how to arrange a bloody death for him. And I'm going to read you 10, the very next verse. Then King David died. He died in vengeance. He died breaking an oath. He died putting a man he had sworn before to God before to death. And you tell me you won't mute him, but you'd mute Kelly? Mute them all. Mute them all. In Christianity, we speak of a new and superior covenant. Somebody saying comparing David to Kelly is the same as justifying and downplaying that. No, 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 no. No, don't get it wrong. What did I say about R. Kelly? Can somebody remind me what I said today about R. Kelly? What did I say about R. Kelly? Mute him. What did I say about David? Mute David too. What did I say about King James? Mute that one too. Let's be fair. Christ hates hypocrisy. Mute them all. This one is still talking about R. Kelly going to Ethiopia to recruit girls. Oh. There's one part of King James that I forgot to read to you, and I will not go without reading it to you. All the parts I was reading to you are even good. Stop using the Psalms. When the devil quoted the scriptures, he didn't quote the New Testament. He quoted Psalms. Be careful with those things. They swing both ways. Go with me to the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 11 and 1. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. Late one afternoon, after his midday rest, David got out of bed and, walking on the roof of the palace, he looked out over the city and he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He sent someone to find out who she was, and he was told she's Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Then David sent messengers to get her, and she came to the palace, and he slept with her. Taste bud shouted covetousness. Inside R. Kelly and David, what's the difference now? I'm asking you, inside R. Kelly and David, what's the difference? And the next thing your wonderful guy did, the next thing your wonderful guy did was when she returned home, later Bathsheba discovered that she was pregnant. She sent David a message saying, I'm pregnant. Then King David sent word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab sent him to David. When Uriah arrived, David asked him how Joab and the army were getting along, how the war was progressing. He told Uriah, go home and relax. David even sent a gift to Uriah after he left the palace, but Uriah didn't go home. He slept that night at the palace entrance with the king's palace guards. When the king heard that Uriah did not go home, he summoned him and asked, what's the matter? Why didn't you go home last night after being away for so long? Uriah replied, the ark and the armies of Israel and Judah are living in tents, and Joab and my master's men are camping in the open field. How can I go home and wine and dine and sleep with my wife? I swear I will never do such a thing. Well, stay here today, David told him, and tomorrow you may return to the army. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that night. Hang on one second. So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that night. David invited him to dinner and got him drunk. David used Shayu. Sorry, I'm logging back Instagram back on. But even then, he couldn't get Uriah to go home to his wife. Again, he slept at the palace entrance with the king's palace guards. So the next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and gave it to Uriah to deliver. The letter instructed Joab, station Uriah on the front lines where the battle is fiercest, then pull back so that he will be killed. So not only did he sleep with his wife and get his wife pregnant, he still sent the guy to go and die in battle. Yes, David was remorseful. But let's be careful how we're... You see, this don't judge. To us, we extend it only to pastors. We cover whom we cover in our hypocrisy. When we put on the cloak of the Pentecostal hypocrisy, we judge whom we want to judge. We free whom we want to free under the same legal system. And you see, it was done to Yahushua. Barabbas, a criminal, was brought, and he was brought. The same legal system that was used to free a criminal was used to put an innocent man to death. And you want to continue because your minds are in the palaces of Caiaphas instead of the wilderness of John. Your minds are with the luxury of Caiaphas instead of the modesty of John. So you think like how Caiaphas and his men thought. The one whom you think deserves your mercy, he does no wrong. And the one whom deserves your criticism can never do any good. Remember the story of Christ and Barabbas before you raise a stone to stone anyone. Pray for them. Oh yes, all those little children that he put their parents and them through misery, he should be tried. He should be brought to book. But you'd be amazed that many of your pastors that you're covering up are worse than him. You'd be amazed that many of the people you love in Nollywood are guilty of this same thing. Many of the beautiful ladies you have in Nollywood, they had to pass through the hands of men who abused them, but got away with it because this is Nigeria. We're not saints, But let's be careful who we tag devils. God bless you all.